You hear old heads talk about it all the time. How nobody plays defense anymore in the modern NBA, and how teams don't work as hard on that end of the court as much as they used to. Well, I can promise you one thing. When they're talking about great defensive teams from past eras, they're definitely not talking about the 1990 to 1991 Denver Nuggets. This team was utter garbage on defense. They weren't just bad, and they were not just record-breaking bad, but their defensive effort was so epically awful that I honestly think you'll have a hard time believing it when I explain the details.
Boy, was that bad defense. Woo! Fumigate the joint.
But first, let's get some context about who this team was and where they came from. The Denver Nuggets of the 1980s were famous for several reasons, like their blistering pace of play, their incredibly potent offense, and their annually atrocious defense. This team was the very definition of the best defense being double the offense. During this era, it was a very regular outcome for the Nuggets to finish with the best offense in the entire league, while also having the league's worst defense. Despite their incredibly lopsided play style, the team was actually pretty competitive, with an all-time great scoring forward in Alex English and a consistent triple-double threat at point guard in Lafayette Lever, more commonly known as Fat Lever. Leading up to the 1990 to 1991 season, the Nuggets had made it to the NBA playoffs 9 straight years, making it as far as the Western Conference Finals in 1985, where they had been eliminated by the Showtime Lakers. So again, although their defense was bad year in and year out, they were still often a very competitive and respectable squad. With that being said, things were dramatically changing at the start of the 1990 to 1991 season. First off, their 2 cornerstone players over the last decade were now departing from the team in the twilight of their careers, as Alex English left in free agency and Fat Lever was traded to the Dallas Mavericks. Along with that, the organization was also in a transition period with their leadership, as they brought in a brand new head coach by the name of Paul Westhead, and they hired a new general manager in Bernie Bickerstaff. The only noteworthy players remaining on the roster were a collection of bucket getters, who were notorious for excelling only offensively, guys like Michael Adams, Orlando Woolridge, and Walter Davis. Literally, the only defensive bright spot that team had on their roster was a 35-year-old T.R. Dunn, who had made 3 all-defense teams throughout his career and was usually the guy assigned to guard the elite perimeter scorers, like Michael Jordan and Clyde Drexler. The problem is that Dunn got injured and decided to call it a career after playing only 17 games in the regular season. Now, the stars had perfectly aligned, and there was nothing interfering Denver from having one of the worst defensive seasons in NBA history. Nobody had high expectations for this group, and even with their new leadership, the culture of laziness and apathetic defensive effort was still firmly intact. Everyone thought this would be an ugly year, but no one could have foreseen or imagined just how disgustingly ugly it would actually get. They opened up their regular season against the Golden State Warriors, who were led by the legendary head coach Don Nelson and a trio of star players in Mitch Richmond, Chris Mullin, and Tim Hardaway. These Run TMC Warriors were also well known for their potent offense and their lackluster defense, so what ensued was a comically high-scoring game. Just look at the amazing defense on display from the Denver Nuggets. Look at the rim protection. Look at the commitment to the perimeter shooters. The result was the highest scoring regulation game in NBA history, as the Warriors defeated the Nuggets with a final score of 162 to 158. Now that's bad enough as is, but I was actually watching footage of this game, and listen to what the commentator says shortly after tip-off.
The Denver Nuggets gave up close to 164 points a game in the preseason.
Close to 164 points a game in the preseason.
I know it's only the preseason, but they were giving up 164 points per game. That's almost enough to compete with modern All-Star games. I know it sounds crazy to even fathom, But somehow, it only got worse from here. The Nuggets would start their season with a 1-11 record, and over that stretch, they were allowing a jaw-dropping 144.6 points per game. No night was worse than November 10th, 1990, when they were playing against the playoff-bound Phoenix Suns. This wasn't just a massacre, but it was one of the most embarrassing team performances in the history of sports. The Nuggets were trailing the Phoenix Suns 107-67 at halftime. To this very day, 107 points in a single half is the most in NBA history. And frankly, second place isn't even close. Imagine your team scores 67 points by the end of the first half, and you're still losing by 40. The final score ended up being 173-143. And here's another crazy fact. On the night, the Phoenix Suns were 0 of 2 from three-point range. That's right, the Denver Nuggets defense gave up 173 points to a team in regulation time only without them making a single three-point shot. If that doesn't emphasize just how bad this defense was, then pretty much nothing will. Now, I'm sure the Nuggets wish that their season had ended right there on the spot, but unfortunately, it continued. Remember how Scott Skiles of the Orlando Magic set the NBA record for the most assists in a single game with 30? Well, that game actually happened against these Nuggets, where the Orlando Magic put up 155 points in a complete blowout. Skiles, a career 11 points per game scorer, also had 22 points to go along with his 30 assists. Eventually, the 1991 Nuggets were put out of their misery, as they finished the regular season with a 20-62 record, which was the worst in the league that season. Somehow, someway, they were ranked number 1 in the entire league that year in scoring, putting up 119.9 points per game. Those 120 points on a nightly basis translated to just 20 wins. And that's because, on the year, they allowed 130.8 points per game, which is easily the most points allowed in NBA history. For the most part, this historically disastrous squad has been widely forgotten, and that's partially due to the fact that they didn't stay that way very long. Because in the following NBA draft, they took Dikembe Mutombo with their first pick, who was simply one of the greatest defensive players in the history of the league, and he basically changed the culture of that squad overnight. With that being said, if we're looking at one individual season in a bottle, then there's little doubt in my mind that the 1990 to 1991 Denver Nuggets are the worst defensive team that the NBA has ever seen. So now it's your turn. If there is one great offensive team that you could put up against these 1991 Denver Nuggets, which team would you choose? And how many points do you think they'd score? I look forward to hearing your hilarious suggestions in the comment section below. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.